Hey, where are you going at this time? As soon as James saw the incoming call on his cell phone, he stopped eating and went back to his room, grabbing his coat to head out. It was supposed to be a rare family time together.
No, I just got a call from Mom saying she fell at home and can't move, so I need to help her. I'm taking her to the night clinic now. Don't worry about anything, you too.
With that, James rushed out of the house. I just watched him leave as usual, but he has been totally indifferent to Betty so far. And yet, now he's suddenly concerned about Betty. And that phone call, I only saw it for a moment, but the caller ID seemed to be set to private. It doesn't make sense to have your own mother's number on private. His behavior just now raised my suspicions all at once. A few minutes after James left, the doorbell suddenly rang. Elizabeth, good evening. I heard you were feeling under the weather, so I made some stew and brought it over. What's going on here? Opening the door, there stood Betty, who was supposed to be unable to move after falling, holding a pot in both hands.
Betty! Just now, James left saying you had fallen and couldn't move.
That's when I was certain. James had lied about Betty being immobile and even trampled on our family time to go somewhere. My name is Elizabeth. Currently, I live with my husband James and our elementary school son Mark, just the three of us. Life hasn't been easy with the recent rise in prices, but we're a close-knit family of three. We met in college. I happened to stop by a cafe where James was working as a waiter. Being shy, I was so nervous about his good looks that I couldn't speak properly as a customer, a memory I still recall. Was this love at first sight? As someone who had never believed in love at first sight, thinking it was more of a superstition, I became confused about what to do. I asked for advice from a high school friend who was experienced in love. Why don't you just talk to him if you're interested? Otherwise, nothing will start, right? Through high school, I only had 2 boyfriends, so what my friend was suggesting seemed like a big challenge. Yeah, I get that, but, I'm shy, and I get even more nervous around him. I just can't bring myself to speak. After about 10 minutes of thinking, we decided that if I couldn't do it alone, we'd go together. So, after university classes, we headed to the cafe where he was likely to be. When we arrived, I saw him at the register. Now's your chance to talk to him. My friend encouraged me as we joined the line to order. Finally, it was my turn. As I approached him, my heart raced even more. He prompted me to order, and I finally spoke up. I'd like a cafe latte, please. And, would you like to be friends with me? The first words I managed to muster came out louder than I could control, audible to other customers in line at the cafe. Embarrassed by being overheard, my shyness kicked in, and my face turned beet red. I hastily passed my order and payment to my friend and dashed out of the cafe. I thought it was over. But my boldness turned out to be a good thing. My friend followed me out, and to my surprise, he followed her. It seemed he was curious about my behavior at the cafe, and since he was on his break, he came after us. I managed to exchange contact information with him, and after hanging out as friends for 6 months, I confessed my feelings. He had developed feelings for me too, and we started dating. After years of dating and living together, we decided to get married. Our son Mark was born, and though life is hectic with childcare and housework, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It's amazing how the fatigue doesn't matter when you're working for your family. I never thought marriage was for me, but once I had a family, my perspective changed completely. However, there's been one major concern in our marriage. Recently, James has been coming home unusually late. Before, he would let me know when he was leaving work, saying, "I'm heading home now." But lately, there's been no such communication, and coming home in the morning has become the norm. He's never worn cologne before, but sometimes he comes home covered in a sweet scent. I confronted James about it, but he always brushes it off, saying he's tired from work or that it's just business entertainment. I knew I needed to face the truth. But thinking about my family, especially Mark, I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce. The only person I could talk to about this was my mother-in-law, Betty. Despite our age difference, We clicked at a family meeting and have been close ever since, more like friends than in-laws. Betty has always been there for me, listening to my struggles with housework and parenting, always taking my side. But this time, I hesitated to talk to her, fearing it might worry her or add to her stress. A few years ago, during a visit, Betty fell ill. It wasn't serious, but given her age, she couldn't lead the same life as before. When I told James that Betty was unwell, he didn't show any concern and returned the next evening, reeking of perfume, saying he couldn't leave work. I was so angry I was nearly at my breaking point. But Betty, ever calm, simply soothed my anger without a word of complaint. Since Betty's hospitalization and return, I've been helping her with household chores and going shopping together. At first, she seemed guilty for accepting my help, but she warmed up when I told her I wanted to assist.
Elizabeth, thank you so much. You make every day enjoyable for me.
No, thank you.
I've learned so much from you, Betty. I enjoy our talks too.
Betty's simple "thank you" means so much to me, someone who rarely receives gratitude. I've resolved to protect Betty. And it was on one such evening. Today, James came home early for a change, and we were going to have dinner as a family for the first time in a while. When James texted that he was leaving work on time, I was so happy I decided to make an extra dish to celebrate, rummaging through the fridge and cooking with joy. Mark, doing his homework in the living room, noticed my good mood and asked,
"Mom, what's up? You seem happy."
"Oh?
Does it show?"
Well, James is coming home early for once.
I'm happy we can have a family dinner together.
Mark's response was lukewarm, perhaps due to his age, but I'm sure he was happy inside. I watched his back as he returned to his homework, and I continued cooking. About 30 minutes later, James came home, and we sat down for a rare family dinner. I made hamburgers at Mark's request and prepared some snacks for James, laying them out on the table. We talked about school, recent events, and other family matters as we ate. Mark, initially aloof, warmed up as the meal progressed, even chatting with James. Family meals like this are so enjoyable. Even if James comes home late, smelling of sweet perfume, moments like this make the bad feelings fade away. I'm realizing that all over again. As we were finishing dinner, James's mobile phone rang, interrupting our family conversation. He glanced at his phone, suddenly stopped eating, and went to his room to grab his coat, as if he was about to leave somewhere.
"Hey, where are you going at this time?" "No, I just got a call saying Mom has fallen at home and can't move, so I'm taking her to the night clinic." "Don't worry about a thing, both of you."
James said that and left the house in a hurry. I watched him go, even though he never showed any interest in Betty before. It was strange that he suddenly seemed concerned about her. And about that call, I only caught a glimpse, but it looked like the caller ID was set to private. It's odd to have your own mother's number set as private. I was just feeling good about our family time, but his actions raised suspicions. Then, the doorbell rang.
"Elizabeth, good evening.
I heard you were feeling ill, so I brought some stew." "What's going on here?" To my surprise, Betty, who was supposed to be unable to move, stood at the door holding a pot.
Betty! James just left saying you had fallen and couldn't move."
I invited Betty in to compare our stories. According to her, James told her not to come near our house, claiming I was ill and resting. She tried to contact him several times to check on me, but he either dodged the questions or assured her that everything was fine, seemingly trying to keep us apart. Now, I was certain. James lied about Betty being immobile and even trampled on our family time to see someone else. I reached my limit and activated a GPS device I had previously installed in the car for emergencies. According to the GPS, James was heading downtown, likely towards the hotel district. Betty peered over my shoulder at my phone, watching James's GPS movements.
"If you want to divorce James, I'll support you. I'm on your side, Elizabeth."
Her words lifted a weight off my shoulders. Empowered by Betty's support, I decided to confront James. The GPS showed his location stopped right in front of a hotel, seemingly confirming his infidelity. However, GPS location information isn't always absolute. It's possible that it's slightly off, and he might not be at the hotel. To confirm his whereabouts, I tried calling James, but after a few rings, the call was disconnected without an answer, and when I tried again, the phone was turned off. Although I had some hope when making the call, there's nothing I can do if his phone is off. Let's leave it for now. We'll talk to James when he comes home tomorrow. With that, I ended the day quietly with Mark and Betty. The next morning, before waking up Mark, I checked the living room to see if James had returned, but he hadn't. The quiet living room, lit only by the morning sun through the curtains, was empty. He didn't come back. It's really over, isn't it? As noon approached, James finally returned, still in the same clothes as when he left. Welcome back, James. We need to talk. What? I'm tired from taking Mom to the night clinic and staying with her. Can we talk later? James scratched his head and sighed, attempting to head to his room. But Betty appeared behind me and blocked his way. You said you were taking your mother to the clinic because she couldn't move? Explain exactly what you mean by that. James's face, which had been calm, suddenly turned pale. Understandably so. He was supposed to have rushed out last night to help his mother, yet here she was, healthy and with me. Unable to say anything, James quietly followed us to the living room, where he saw my parents, who I had called earlier. Realizing the situation, he sat down without being asked and prepared himself to listen. James, you know why we are all gathered here. Tell us the reason yourself. Under Betty's intense questioning, James, sweating profusely, hung his head in silence. If you won't talk, I will. Last night, you said you were taking Betty to the night clinic because she was injured. But actually, you were in the hotel district, weren't you? And I didn't fall or get hurt. You also kept me away from the house, saying Elizabeth was ill. You didn't want me coming over because it was inconvenient, right? I pulled out my mobile phone and showed the evidence that the last GPS location was a hotel. James was shocked to realize that his location was being shared with me. It had been easy to track James. I've been busy with childcare and housework, and out of good conscience, this was the first time I activated the app because of this incident. James looked at me, wanting to ask how I installed the app, but given the situation, he couldn't bring it up. That makes sense. If he questioned me about it, it would be like admitting he was in a suspicious place. If he doesn't say anything, no matter the evidence, the truth won't be fully revealed. He probably calculated it that way. But Betty and I wouldn't let that strategy work. We were determined to uncover the truth. James, would you care to explain? No, this is... Just then, James's phone vibrated with a notification. Seeing his expression cloud over, I quickly grabbed the phone and saw a message from a woman saying, "You forgot something." Attached was a photo of a young woman, probably in her 20s, holding James's coin case. Who is this young lady? You're not going to say something transparent like she's a junior at work, are you? James's face turned from pale to white, not expecting such definitive proof from his affair partner. James had been silent, trying to hide the truth, but now there was no escape. James, call this woman right now. And make sure she explains everything. Betty's tone was unlike anything I had heard from her before. The words Betty hurled at James were immensely heavy. I got goosebumps from the sheer intensity of it. James, without any resistance to that overpowering presence, obediently called the other woman, putting her on speakerphone so that everyone present could hear the conversation. The woman, named Lisa, sounded like she was in her early 20s, a typical modern girl. Was she really James's type? You were with James yesterday, weren't you? Did you know he's married, or did you meet him unaware of his marital status? Yes, I knew. James told me himself. He's always complaining about his personal life every time we meet at the hotel. Honestly, listening to him has been exhausting. So, you knew he was married, met him at the hotel, and even called him to the hotel district yesterday? Well, yes, I called him, but he was the one who forgot about the hotel reservation we had. So I just wanted to know what he planned to do about it. This meant that James left the house last night because he received a call about an appointment he had forgotten. He chose his affair over family time. The James who used to be kind and cared about his family had changed somehow after marrying me and the birth of Mark. It was more of a feeling of emptiness than sadness or anger. Mom looked puzzled, and Dad seemed ready to punch James any moment. In truth, I've been aware of James's womanizing for a while now. I kept silent because I didn't want to worry everyone. I thought about divorce, but I didn't want Mark to suffer with a single mother. So that's why you seemed down when you visited me. Did it show on my face? Not exactly, but I'm a mother too, Elizabeth, and we've known each other for a long time. I just had a feeling you were troubled. I thought I was suppressing these feelings to avoid burdening anyone, but maybe deep down, I was silently crying for help. Wanting someone to notice. But now, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I've opened up about my feelings, and everyone understands. It's all been cleared away. I can't be with someone like you anymore, who has a bad track record with women and doesn't care about his family. I want a divorce. Finally, I was able to voice my feelings to James. Then, James, who had been silent, finally spoke up with a sigh.
Ha, it's actually your fault, you know? Before we got married, you were all womanly, but after we got married, you lost all your charm. That's why I'm having fun with young, cute girls like Lisa. What's wrong with that?
His brazen defiance and unjustified blame-shifting made my anger boil. The audacity of his claims was infuriating. Certainly, since Mark was born, I've been so busy with housework and childcare that I hardly had any time or energy for myself. But I did it because I believed family happiness was important. I was content not spending time or money on myself if it meant my family could live happily. This man trampled on all those feelings and got caught up with a young girl, putting his family second, if not completely out of his mind. Probably, James thinks that providing money for the house is enough.
Do you have any idea how hard it is to be a mother? I gave up everything to raise you, doing housework and childcare. James, you really are a hopeless man. James, that's too much. You've gone too far.
Despite the severe criticism from everyone, James, who had completely defiant, showed no damage, leaning back in his chair and fiddling with his mobile phone. There was no sign of remorse. No, even if he did feel remorse, it wouldn't make a difference now, but you'd think our words would at least resonate with him a little. However, there was no sign of that in James. The conversation that started in the afternoon continued for hours, and Mark came home from school. I'm home. Oh, why is everyone here? Hey Mark. Welcome back. Listen to this. Mark gave James, who clung to him, a cold look. Please don't touch me. I can't think of a person who meets other women outside and neglects our family and hurts Mom as my dad. Mark, despite his young age, seemed to understand everything. Everyone was surprised by his words. We never mentioned James's infidelity to anyone, let alone within the family. In fact, we never even discussed James's womanizing behavior. But somehow, Mark knew about James's affairs.
Mark! Are you going to abandon me too? Who raised you and bought you everything you wanted? It was me, right?
No, Mom raised me. She made meals even when she was busy. Sure, the money was yours, but everything I wanted was bought by Mom.
That's thanks to me, isn't it? Who do you think allows you to live in this house and have a comfortable life? It's all because of my hard work. Show some gratitude.
At James's words, show some gratitude. I found myself moving unconsciously, and before I knew it, I had slapped James across the face with force.
How dare you say show some gratitude? Do you know how much I've struggled, keeping our finances in order for our future, cleaning the lipstick off your suit collars? Suit collars? You can't mean.
I fetched a shirt from the laundry basket and threw it at James, now collapsed on the floor.
Do you know? Lipstick on a shirt comes off when you gently hand wash it in warm water and then apply detergent directly to the stain. I learned that to clean up after your affairs. Have you ever thought about how I felt doing that? Of course, you haven't.
After my outburst, I suddenly caught my breath. On the floor lay James, holding his red and swollen cheek, looking up at me. How much had I suffered for this man?
By now, even you must understand, right?
Divorce Elizabeth immediately.
And as an apology for all the stress you've caused, vow never to contact her, me, or us ever again. Don't come near Mom, me, or even Grandpa and Grandma anymore. You've never been, and certainly aren't now, my dad. Just get out.
With Mark also abandoning him, James, who thought he had an ally in his son, lost his place. I demanded a divorce in compensation, declaring that he would never get custody of Mark. My parents refused any further contact with James and deleted his information, while Betty, even though he was her only son, decided to cut ties right there. James, rejected by everyone, left the house without much resistance, walking towards the bustling streets under the evening sky. Later, I learned that Lisa, his affair partner, was also married and facing a hefty compensation claim from her husband. It seemed unlikely that young Lisa could afford it, but that was her problem. James signed the divorce papers without hesitation and agreed to pay alimony and child support until Mark graduated from high school. But this drastically changed his comfortable, somewhat extravagant lifestyle. Now living in an old apartment on the outskirts of town, he struggles financially. Mainly because he never learned to cook and resorts to fast food and instant noodles. All of this is a result of James's own actions, his fault. I decided to move back to my parents' house in Dallas with Mark. Though it meant changing schools for personal reasons, Mark agreed without complaint, which was a relief. Mark's friends looked a bit sad, but Mark, having matured a bit through this incident, comforted them, saying, "I'll definitely come to visit." Despite being the one transferring, I am proud of how strong my son has grown. Betty and I remained close even after the divorce. Despite initially refusing, I accepted some financial help from her, as she insisted on supporting us due to her son's actions. This helped us avoid financial difficulties. Now, we sometimes have dinner together, and Betty even sends gifts for Mark's birthday. Mark seems happy, surrounded by many people. With my parents helping out on weekdays, I've returned to my pre-marriage pharmacy job and am enjoying fulfilling workdays. Now when I come home, Mark and my parents welcome me. Surrounding the dinner table with my family is my happiest moment.